All right, everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into global education.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. And, spoiler alert, it's not all good news out there.
Right.
But the cool thing is we got this in-depth analysis of out-of-school rates from around the world.
Okay.
And it breaks it down by region, by age group, by gender. And honestly, some of the findings are pretty shocking.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So we're going to be exploring who is getting left behind, like where is this happening the most?
Mm-hmm.
And, the biggest question of all, why should we all care?
Right.
Especially since, well, there are some major disparities, especially for girls in certain parts of the world.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, the most crucial part of this is understanding these trends. If we care about equality, about opportunity on a global scale.
For sure, for sure.
We always say that education is a fundamental right.
Right.
It's like the key to unlocking potential and progress for individuals, for countries, for everyone. But when you actually look at the data, it's not that simple.
Yeah, it reveals a much, much more complicated story.
In the data skies, we take our flight. Trends and numbers come to life. Colors and charts, they dance and play. Showing truth in a visual way. In GenderDecoded, we uncover truths and stories like no other. In the data waves we find the secret maps of humankind.
So to give us a starting point, what's the big picture here?
So globally, millions of children are out of school.
Okay.
And sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia.
Yeah.
Those are the two regions that are really facing the most severe challenges.
Okay.
The report actually highlights that there's a staggering 97.4 million children in sub-Saharan Africa alone who are out of school. Wow. That's a huge number. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's almost the entire population of Egypt.
Yeah. It's hard to even fathom that many kids.
Yeah. And then we compare that to places like Europe and North America, where the report says the rates are the lowest.
Right. Huge contrast there.
Yeah. And that makes you think, okay, so what are those factors that are causing these massive disparities?
Yeah. And before we get too far into that, I think it's important to just define what we mean by out of school.
Right. Yeah, that's important.
Because it's not just about kids who never enroll at all. It's also those who start school but then drop out at some point along the way.
Oh, so this is kind of a multi-layered issue then.
It is. It's complex. Yeah.
Okay. And you had mentioned that one of the things that you're really curious about is the gender gap in education.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's a major piece of this puzzle.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that at the primary school level, the difference between boys and girls attending school globally, it's actually quite small.
Really? I would have thought that would be a lot wider right off the bat.
You'd think so. But that's where things get really interesting, because as children progress to higher levels of education, that gap often widens significantly.
Okay. So the gap is small early on.
Yeah. It's not where you'd expect the real problem to be.
Okay. So let's break this down by age group then. What happens at the lower secondary school level?
So that's kind of middle school age for a lot of folks.
Gotcha.
And that's where you start to see the gender gap really emerge in a lot of regions.
Okay.
If we take sub-Saharan Africa as an example again, the report shows that while around 21% of boys are out of school at that level, for girls, it jumps to 36.7%.
Wow. So it's not just that fewer kids overall are in school at that age. It's that girls are disproportionately affected as they get older.
Exactly. And we see that trend in other regions, too. Southern Asia, for instance, has a similar issue with a lot of girls leaving school during this critical phase. And the report highlights Bangladesh specifically because they actually have a law there mandating free and compulsory education up to the 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
But even with that law in place, you still have a lot of families pulling their daughters out of school due to social and economic pressures.
I see. So it's not enough to just have the laws in place.
Right. You've got to address those underlying cultural and economic factors.
Okay. So then moving up to upper secondary. So now we're talking high school.
High school. Yep. This is where it gets even more alarming.
I was going to say, does it get better or worse?
Unfortunately not. At the upper secondary level, that disparity becomes even more pronounced.
Oh, no.
Sub-Saharan Africa, again, stands out with a staggering 57.5% of girls out of school by this age.
57.5%. So that's over half the girls in that region.
More than half. Not even getting a chance to finish high school.
And that's compared to places like Europe and North America, where the report shows barely any gap at all.
It's a stark difference. It really highlights just how unequal the opportunities are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we've been talking a lot about sub-Saharan Africa, but are there other regions that are sort of outliers in terms of that gender gap?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, Afghanistan, for example.
Okay.
They've had armed conflicts and political instability for years, which has obviously disrupted education.
Right, of course.
But the report points out that since the Taliban came back into power, there's been a really significant drop in girls' enrollment.
It just shows how complicated this issue is.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
It's not just one thing. It's a bunch of different things all coming together.
And I think that's something really important to keep in mind as we go through this report.
Yeah, this is just kind of a general overview.
Right, exactly. We're getting the big picture.
Yeah.
But the specific reasons behind these disparities, they're going to vary from country to country, from community to community.
Gotcha. So it's a nuanced picture.
It is. It really is.
So amidst all of this, I mean, are there any sort of bright spots, or is this all just kind of doom and gloom?
Oh, there are definitely reasons for hope.
Okay. Good. I was hoping you'd say that.
In the next part of our deep dive, we're actually going to look at some of the organizations that are out there tackling these challenges head on.
Right.
They're doing some really amazing work, empowering girls, breaking down barriers, creating real change.
Okay. I am definitely ready to talk about solutions. I feel like we need that after all these numbers.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see what's being done.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for part 2 where we dive into that.
Awesome. I can't wait. All right. So we're back and we're ready to talk about solutions.
Yeah, let's shift gears a little bit.
It's into some positive stuff.
It's easy to get bogged down in the numbers, but there are people out there really dedicated to making a difference.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about this. So you mentioned organizations that are tackling these challenges. What are some examples of how they're doing that?
Well, if we go back to those root causes we were talking about, cultural norms, economic hardship, limited access to schools.
Right.
A lot of the most effective solutions kind of address those things directly.
That makes sense. So, like, give me a concrete example. Like, how are they actually tackling these complex issues?
So one really powerful approach is to empower girls and challenge those traditional gender norms.
Okay.
That can involve promoting female role models.
Oh, okay.
Encouraging girls to pursue STEM fields.
Right.
And even working with communities to shift attitudes about the importance of girls' education.
So it's kind of like changing the narrative almost.
Exactly.
Showing girls that they are capable of anything.
Yeah, and that they deserve an education just as much as boys do.
Yeah. How do these organizations actually go about achieving that kind of change, though? Because that's a big undertaking.
It is, and it often starts at the grassroots level.
Okay.
The report actually highlights this great example from a rural community in India where an organization can educate girls is working.
Okay.
And they train local women as community mobilizers.
Oh, interesting.
So these women go door to door talking to families
Oh, wow.
about the benefits of educating their girls.
Oh.
And they challenge those traditional beliefs.
So they're kind of like on-the-ground advocates almost.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And they organize community meetings and events to build support for girls' education.
That's awesome. So it's like empowering the women within the community to kind of be the agents of change.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's a huge part of it.
that's really cool. What about the economic barriers, though? Because you talked about that a lot of families simply can't afford to send their kids to school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one. And that's where things like financial assistance come in.
Okay.
Organizations are providing scholarships, stipends, even cash transfers to families to help alleviate those costs.
So it's kind of like removing those practical obstacles
Yeah,
that might prevent a girl from actually attending school.
exactly. Like there's this organization called CAMFED
Okay.
that works in sub-Saharan Africa, and they have a program where they provide financial support to girls to cover school fees, uniforms, even things like sanitary pads,
Oh, wow.
which can be a big barrier for girls attending school.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
It's about making it possible for them to actually stay in school.
Yeah. Not just making it available, but making it accessible, too.
Exactly.
We also talked about the lack of physical access to schools.
Right.
Like what's being done to address that?
That's another huge piece of this. And the report talks about room to read,
Okay.
which focuses on building schools and libraries,
Awesome.
particularly in those underserved rural areas.
Okay.
And they've constructed thousands of schools,
Wow.
bringing education closer to the communities that need it most.
So it's literally like building the infrastructure where it's needed.
And they also train local teachers, provide books and other resources to ensure quality education.
Oh, so it's not just about the building itself.
No, it's about building a whole system
Okay.
that can support that education.
You'd mentioned earlier that sometimes there are gender-specific needs within the schools themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Things like separate toilets.
Yeah, they can be huge.
Yep.
And a lot of organizations are really focusing on that,
Okay.
advocating for and constructing separate sanitation facilities for girls,
Yeah.
just ensuring that they have privacy and safety.
Okay.
And the report mentions that in some cases, that's made a dramatic difference in girls' attendance and comfort levels at school.
It's crazy how those seemingly small things can have such a big impact.
They really can, yeah.
We've talked about Educate Girls, CAMEV, Room to Read.
Yeah.
Are there any other organizations that stand out to you?
One that's really caught my eye is the Malala Fund.
Oh, of course.
They work globally advocating for girls' education,
Mm-hmm.
and they support local activists all around the world.
Okay.
And what's interesting about their approach is that they don't just focus on access.
Mm-hmm.
They also really emphasize the quality of the education that girls receive.
Oh, so it's not just about getting them in school.
No, it's about making sure they're getting something valuable out of it.
Yeah, that they're actually learning and growing. It's so amazing to see what Malala is doing. I mean, her story is so inspiring.
It really is.
And it's great that she's using her platform to create change for other girls.
Absolutely.
So it's clear that these organizations are doing a lot of good work.
Yeah.
But I imagine they're facing an uphill battle.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How can we as individuals help support these efforts?
It's a global issue which can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But even small actions can make a difference.
Oh.
Donating to these organizations however much you can afford.
Okay.
Spreading awareness about the issue within your own networks.
Okay. So even just talking about it with friends and family.
Yeah, sharing information on social media.
Yeah.
All of that helps because it raises awareness, which can lead to more support, more donations, more people putting pressure on governments and institutions to prioritize this.
Okay. So using our voices, using our resources, using our influence however we can.
Exactly.
To kind of create a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if we fail to close this gender gap?
That's the big question, right? What are the consequences of inaction?
Yeah. It feels like a really important thing to talk about.
It is. The implications are huge.
Okay.
And they go way beyond just the individual girls.
All right. Well, I think that's a perfect place to pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Because I want to dig into that more. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our deep dive. And I think we left off on a pretty big question.
Yeah, we did. We were about to dig into the consequences of not addressing this gender gap in education.
Right. So no pressure, but like what happens if we fail? Yeah. What are the implications?
Well, they're pretty far-reaching.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the individual girls who are missing out.
Right. So let's start with the individual girl. What's at stake for her if she's denied an education?
Education is a fundamental human right. It's also a powerful tool for empowerment.
Okay.
When you deny a girl that, right, you're essentially denying her the opportunity to reach her full potential.
Yeah, makes sense. She's less likely to find decent work, earn a good income, break free from the cycle of poverty.
And it's not just about the money, though, right? It's also about having choices, having control over your own life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Education gives girls the knowledge, the critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
They need to make informed decisions about their health, their families, their communities.
So it's about having a voice, being able to participate
Right.
in shaping your own future.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the individual girl, but you mentioned a ripple effect.
Yeah.
How does this then impact families and communities?
The report actually has this really interesting case study from Senegal.
Okay.
They found that in communities where girls are educated, they're more likely to marry later, have healthier children,
Okay.
be more involved in decision-making in their communities.
Wow.
And their families tend to be better off economically.
So it's like this upward spiral almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Where when you educate girls, it benefits everyone around them.
And the whole community benefits from that knowledge and those skills.
So then zooming out even further, what does this mean for a country's overall well-being?
There's a clear link between higher levels of female education and positive development indicators.
Okay. So give me some examples.
Countries with more educated women tend to have lower rates of infant and maternal mortality.
Oh, wow.
Better health outcomes overall.
Oh, okay.
Increased economic growth.
Makes sense.
Even greater political stability.
So investing in girls' education isn't just a nice thing to do.
It's smart.
It's essential for progress on a national level.
Exactly. It's an investment in the future of the country.
And then, if we take it to the biggest picture possible, the global scale.
Yeah.
What are we missing out on by denying education to millions of girls?
We're facing such complex global challenges right now.
Right. Climate change, poverty, conflict.
And we need everyone at the table.
Yeah. To come up with solutions.
We need every mind, every voice, every idea.
So you're saying that by not educating girls, we're actually limiting our collective problem-solving power.
Yeah. We're missing out on a huge pool of talent and creativity and innovation.
It's not just about those individual girls, then.
No. It's about all of us.
It's about the future of humanity.
Exactly.
The World Bank actually estimates that closing the gender gap in education could add trillions of dollars to the global economy.
It's not just an ethical issue.
Yeah.
It's an economic one.
We're holding ourselves back
Right.
by not investing in the education of all children.
And there's also that social and political cost to consider.
Right.
When you marginalize girls and deny them an education, it perpetuates those harmful gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
It undermines all those efforts we're making towards equality.
Absolutely.
It weakens democratic processes.
Yeah.
It can even contribute to social unrest.
So I think we've answered our question from earlier. What happens if we fail to close this gender gap?
It seems pretty clear.
We all lose.
Everyone loses.
Yeah.
It's not just about those individual girls missing out.
Right. It's a loss for everyone.
Yeah. It really diminishes our collective future.
So much good information in this report.
It's really eye-opening.
Yeah, it's alarming, but it's also hopeful.
It is.
Because we're seeing people working to create change.
Absolutely.
We're seeing organizations dedicated to making a difference.
And I think this report really highlights the importance of those efforts.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the question for our listener is, what do we do with this knowledge?
Yeah.
What can we all do?
We know the problem. We see the consequences. What's next?
Knowledge is power, but it only matters if we use it.
Oh.
We can support those organizations that are working on the front lines. We can advocate for policies that prioritize girls' education. We can challenge those harmful stereotypes within our own communities.
Yeah.
We can inspire the next generation of girls to dream big and to pursue their education.
So it's about taking action.
It is. It's about each of us doing our part.
However big or small.
Exactly.
To create that ripple effect.
Yeah.
And build a better future for everyone.
This has been a really powerful conversation. I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been great.
And I hope our listeners feel empowered to make a difference.
I hope so too.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into global education disparities.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic that matters.